Hello and welcome to the Healthy Middle Ground podcast with me, Jen Curtis. Okay, so this week I want to talk about a super duper important topic, and that is time management. But I'm going to come at this from a bit of a different angle from how most people talk about time management. I'm not talking about productivity hacks and getting more done with your time. I'm coming at it from a different angle. We live in a world where everyone is so pressed for time. Nobody has enough time to do anything. Everyone feels so, or at least all the people I know around me, all of my clients, all of my friends feel so overwhelmed that they never get everything done. They're always feeling like they're not on top of their tasks, their work, parenting, anything. And it's just complete and utter overwhelm. There are just too many things to do and not enough time to do it. And this has honestly been on my radar for a long time. It comes up in coaching all the time. It comes up in conversations with friends all the time. But I feel like recently it is like the central topic of my coaching. I've always said that when it comes to the coaching, look, the fat loss and the training, it's not that hard. It's really not rocket science. And I really try to simplify it rather than complicate. But that's not usually the reason why people can't lose weight. It's normally because of other things, other lifestyle choices or other like issues or other things that are in our head that are getting in the way of us being able to do those things. And the thing that is coming up more than anything else at the moment is this feeling of overwhelm, too much stuff to do. I never have enough time to get my workouts in. I don't have enough time to track. I don't have enough time to do anything. I'm always stressed. I'm always overwhelmed. And then a lot of people are getting burnt out, they're crashing, they're getting sick, their body's just at some point giving in and saying no, or having some kind of a mental breakdown and just being like, I can't keep doing this. So this, as I said, this has been on my radar for a long time, and it's something that has come up in the coaching a lot lately. But I really feel like it needs to be talked about now because it's the thing I think that most people struggle with more than anything else. And it also happens to be something that I feel that I have kind of changed about my life in the past few years that has made my life both more productive and more chilled, and just kind of a better, slower pace. And that I feel like I'm not one of these people who is always busy and always has too much on their plate. And I think I figured out a few key things over the past few years to be in that place. And I want to share that with you, okay? Because I think it's really possible to get out of this endless cycle of feeling like I never have enough time and I never get everything done. But I think the solution is very counterintuitive, and it's probably the opposite of what you think you should do. And the advice I'm going to give you in this episode is probably the opposite of what you've been told until now. Very, very, very countercultural, very counterintuitive. And I've got a lot of these ideas that the main thing that has influenced me in putting this podcast together is a book called Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman. And I haven't actually read his book, to be honest with you. I did a podcast series. I listened to a podcast series on Sam Harris's Waking Up app that he did that took you through the major ideas. And what I'm going to talk about in this podcast is mainly based on his ideas in that book, and I'm going to link a link to his book and a link to a good podcast on the topic from him that I highly recommend. But I'm going to share with you the big ideas that I got from this book, kind of boshed together with a few other ideas I've got from a couple of other places. What I'm gonna talk about in this podcast episode is, first of all, we're gonna outline what the problem is. Second of all, we're going to talk about like the different elements of just life being so overwhelming and the different elements of time management. And then at the end, I'm just gonna pull it together and give you some really just like practical things. I think about 3 things for how to, like what the solution is, how to get out of this endless trap of feeling like I've got so much to do and not enough time to do it. Okay, so first of all, let's define the problem. And I've already kind of said this to some degree, is that everyone feels so overwhelmed. Everyone around me just like, oh my God, it's so, they use the word hectic. They use the word, it's just so busy all the time. And people often say, oh, it's just a really busy period. It's just a really hectic period. It's just a really chaotic period. But they're constantly saying that, and it's always like that. It never stops being like that. There's this feeling that there's just too little time, too much to do, and everyone is just trying to become more efficient, but constantly drowning and feeling like they're never getting everything done. And then as a result, what I notice is that people are living in constant stress and just being stressed all the time. They never have a period of their day where they de-stress, where they calm their nervous system down, where they decompress. They never have it in their week, and they're just always go, 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 go. And there's this kind of work hard, play hard mentality. They're going really, really hard into their weekends. Everything's chock-a-block. It's really full to the brim. Their holidays and they're coming back off of weekends more tired than they went into it, coming back off holidays more tired than they went into it. Everything is like, about doing, and there's no time for rest, relaxation, for decompressing. And then what ends up happening is people need food to decompress. Obviously, some of us have other coping mechanisms like drinking alcohol or smoking weed, but they're not great solutions either. And so what a lot of people do, what is very socially acceptable and what feels quite benign, is decompressing with food and kind of numbing or escaping with food. Often a lot of things like social media as well, but mostly, but food is a real problem in my work, obviously. Leads to a lot of weight gain, leads to a lot of excess pounds that people can't get rid of. And I think that part of the problem is that we grew up, our generation, I'm 38, and our generation grew up with a narrative that there are no limits. The sky is the limit. The world's your oyster. You can do anything. And the problem is that it sounds nice, but it's just not true. And because we've grown up and we continue to grow up with those messages, or we continue to, live with those messages, we keep thinking it's true. And there is a mismatch between what is actually possible and what we think is possible. So the problem isn't actually one of like better time management, better focus, getting more things done, productivity. The problem is actually one of unrealistic expectations, of thinking that you can just do everything, that you can work. One phrase I hear repeated a lot is working like you don't have kids and parenting like you don't have a job. And a lot of women say this as in there's a societal expectation. And I would argue that literally nobody expects you to do that. Only you expect you to do that. And we all kind of have this belief that is actually true, that's actually the standards and the expectations that we have to live up to. But it actually isn't how the world works, and it isn't how the time-space continuum works, and it isn't actually reality. And in denying reality, that's the base of our problem, not the fact that the problem isn't that we don't have enough time, right? Everyone has the same amount of time. Everyone in history has always had the same amount of time. It's just that we don't understand the finitude of the time that we have. We don't understand limits. And this is, I think this is a wider societal problem, that we think that everything is unlimited, that we have a problem of abundance, of too much stuff. And there are other examples I can give of sort of thinking that the world doesn't have limits, and then being, sorely disappointed because it actually does. But this is ultimately the problem that we experience when it comes to time management. Our time is finite, and we basically have a supply and demand problem. There is way more demands on our time than there is supply, than there is time to actually do it. And our expectations are out of whack with what we can actually do. So then we end up in this really miserable loop of feeling like I've got all these things to do, setting these crazy expectations that they're all going to get done and we're going to do it all perfectly, we're going to get to the end of our to-do list, and then it not happening because it's impossible, right? It's setting impossible expectations for ourselves, like expecting yourself to fly off the roof and then being upset that you can't do it. And then afterwards, the spirals of feeling disappointed, feeling frustrated, feeling guilty, feeling not good enough, feeling like I'm not doing good enough. It's like, in Buddhism, they call that the second arrow. The first arrow is the thing that this thing sucks, I can't do all the things I want to do. And then the second arrow hurts way more than the first arrow. And that's all the guilt, the frustration, the disappointment that comes afterwards. That second arrow is much more painful. It's more painful than not being able to do these things, is the fact that I feel so disappointed and bad about myself because I'm not able to do these things. Whereas it was never possible in the first place. So again, it's like being pissed off and upset that you can't fly off the roof of your house, right? It's not something that humans are able to do. And so what we have to do is ultimately bring our expectations in line with physical reality, not try to change our abilities or limitations or what we're able to do to fit our expectations. That is never, ever, ever going to work. Okay, so the first big point that I think we all have to really drill into our brains is that time is a finite resource. We only have 168 hours a week. And most people, probably you, if you're listening to this, are trying to fit 300 hours worth of stuff and activities and things you want to do into 168 hours a week, and it just is not possible. And you just all that you end up with is frustration, disappointment, guilt, and burnout, and you never actually end up in succeeding in your goal. And a big insight that I took, one of the main insights that I took from the book Time Management for Mortals, is that there will always be too much to do. You will never get to the bottom of your to-do list, no matter how efficient you are, no matter how productive you are. It will never be done. The work will never be done. And the big insight that I took away was that in work, I've got all these different areas of my life, right? Work, kids, my relationship, my bigger extended family, my community. Everyone has expectations on my time. Everyone wants things from me. But the thing about the supply and demand problem here is that no matter what you give people, no matter what you do, they will always want more. So my kids is a great example. If I gave up my job, became a stay-at-home mum, dedicated myself 100% to my kids, homeschooled them, was with them 24/7, they would still want more from me. If I gave them gifts every single day, they wouldn't say, oh, Mum, this is more than enough gifts. They'd say, I want more, because that's just the reality of children, first of all. And that's just how their brains work. They always want more. They haven't developed a sense of limits. We have to teach them limits. The irony here is that most of us don't have a sense of limits ourselves. So we just cannot teach our children that. But I digress. The main point here is that they will always want more. No matter how much you put into your relationship, that your husband will always want, your wife, whatever, will always want more from you. No matter how much you do at work, if you have a boss, if you get to the end of your to-do list, you do all the work they've given to you, they won't just say, oh, great, just chill. They'll give you something else, right? If you're self-employed like I am, if you do all the things you're supposed to do, you'll still have a bajillion other things that you think you should do that you're not getting to. This is just the nature of things. This is just the nature of the world. And the only way out of this is to accept this reality, is to say, okay, I'm never going to feel like I've finished. I'm never going to get to the end of my to-do list. There's always going to be more stuff to do. But I'm going to give what I have to give, the time I have allocated for this task, or for this relationship or whatever. And then I have to move on because there are other things to do. And it's never going to feel like enough. It's like especially if things are going well, it's not just when things are going badly, but if I don't know about you, right? But I'm a mum. I don't have that much time to meet up with my best friends. But when I do, and we meet up for coffee, we're like, oh my God, 3 hours has just flown by. Like, how did that happen? It feels like no time. And we could keep talking for another 10 hours and we still wouldn't be done. That's the nature of things. But you have to say, okay, that time for that is finished. Now I have to move on to the next thing. And the only way out of this is to accept how reality and how time really is. Okay, so the big problem of our era, of the 21st century, is that we've replaced things that work with things that sound good. And often we love to say these comforting myths and sound bites rather than the cold, hard reality of it. And the cold, hard reality of it is that your time is finite. You just do not have time to do everything. And the opportunities available in the world are infinite. And in order for you to make the most of the finite time you have to accept that giving yourself to any one task, to any one project, you are saying no to a million other things that you could be doing. I remember being told this at university, that any one book that you decide to read, you're effectively deciding not to read millions of other books that you could be reading instead. This is just the nature of things. And once you accept this, I know it's hard, but once you accept this reality, this cold, hard reality of life, you can actually start to decide how to spend this time. So there's basically a mismatch between the infinite options and possibilities available in the world and our ability to do those things. We only have limited resources. We have limited time on this planet. We have limited time each week, and we have limited energy. We have limited money. So we have to decide how to budget these things. So just like budgeting with money, you also have to learn how to budget your time. You only have so much of it, okay? And that is the only way to get out of this trap. I think that then you have to, once you realize the finite reality that we live in, you then have to recognize that a certain amount of time has to be dedicated towards certain tasks that are not optional throughout your day or week. So for example, if you need 8 hours sleep each night to feel good and function well the next day, but that automatically zaps 8 hours in every 24-hour period. You need to eat, you need to go to the toilet, you need to shower, you need to get ready, if you travel to work, you need to account for travel time. You need to account for childcare, for all the hours that your kids are not in school or not in nursery. All of these things take up your time. Cooking, cleaning, unless you have like a cook or a cleaner or something like that. Like all these things are going to take up your time. You're going to need to answer a certain amount of messages each week. Once you start to add them up, those 168 hours a week all dwindle really, really, really quickly. And there's very little time left each week for the really critical tasks or for other things that you want to do. And so you have to decide how to spend them wisely. Otherwise, we get lost in less important tasks and all of that time disappears. And now we've got no time left. Okay, so the next big insight, which is very much related to the first. So the first big insight is that time is a finite resource. The second big insight is that there will always be too much to do. There will always be more demands on your time than time you have available to do them. Your kids will always want more. Your relationship will always want more. I said that before. But also, the nature of things are that the reward for good time management is more work, okay? If you are somebody who is really efficient in your job and you get everything done and you get all your emails done, the thing is that people then recognize that you've emailed everyone back, so then everyone emails you back, and now you have more emails to respond than you did in the first place. So no matter how good you are at responding to emails, the irony is that because you're good at it, that creates more work. So, and if you are somebody who is particularly efficient at work and you get big projects done, guess what? Your boss is going to put those projects on you because you're going to get them the price or the reward for good time management is always more work. And an expression that Oliver Burkeman uses in his book that really stuck with me is that we have to resist the temptation to clear the decks. So when we come into work in the morning, I can relate this to my work, right? I often have a lot of WhatsApp messages from my clients and like emails to answer, and if I've been posting on Instagram messages to answer. And I often fall into the temptation of clearing the decks first, feeling like I need to answer everyone's messages first before I can get on with the important tasks of my day. And what Oliver Burkeman says to do, that is very counterintuitive, is to flip this paradigm round. And rather than clearing the decks, what you need to do is prioritize your time at the beginning of the day for the most important work, because you will never clear the decks. If you message everyone back and email everyone back, you'll just end up with a bunch more emails and messages back at you. Obviously, we can't just ignore these things. I can't just not reply to my clients. I can't not reply to my son's teacher. I can't not reply to those things. But we have to be able to complete critical tasks despite knowing that we haven't cleared the decks first. Okay, it's the ability to stay with one activity despite feeling like there are other things resolved. So he describes it as an anti-skill, the ability to not do something. So being able to come in the morning and say, okay, I know there are all these messages that I need to answer, but I'm going to leave it for now and I'm going to crack on with some more important work. So for me, in my job, that's writing a podcast or scripting something or doing social media posts or creating content for my members site, where that is stuff that I need good brain power. I need morning brain power. I'm most focused in the morning, and that's when I can most focus on those more complex tasks. And then to push things like answering emails or messages to later in the day when maybe you're not as sharp, you're not as focused, but they're always going to be there, right? I know that if I answer just a few hours later to whoever it is, whether it's a mum at my kid's school or my clients or friends, it doesn't matter. People are okay with that. People don't need to be answered immediately, and many times it slows down the communication. It gives them a chance to think of things themselves because people just message back immediately. I mean, I'm sure we all have a friend like this. I have a friend who she's on her phone 24/7, and if you send her a message, she immediately messages back with like what is in her mind. So if I say, do you want to meet next Wednesday? She'll go, oh, I think I've got something then. I'll check my calendar. I'll let you know. And it's like, you've just sent me loads of messages and now you're gonna have to go check your calendar and then come back to me. Why don't you go and just like answer me? And then she'll message me saying, I don't have time to check my calendar yet, so I'll get back to you in a moment. And it's like, you're messaging me so many times before you've even told me anything. And we create more work for ourselves because we feel like we need to answer instantaneously. Whereas often if she just waited, checked her calendar when she was at work, when she wasn't driving anymore, when she wasn't multitasking with her son, she would actually get things done and then answer me and say, yes, I can do it, or no, I can't do it. And this is the trap that a lot of us fall into. We fall into a busyness trap because we feel like we need to clear the decks, answer straight away. We actually create more work for ourselves and for other people. We feel like we're being productive. We feel like we're being very responsive, but actually we're just kind of creating this cycle of activity that isn't actually leading to anything good. Now, you can't just not do emails or messages, right? It's just that you can delay them a little bit because it is an important task and it does have a deadline to it. You do have to answer people. You can't just ghost everyone, right? I'm not saying that that's what you should do. But by pushing it back a little bit, you stop the busyness trap. But also when you do eventually get to it, you can say, let's say you've got 2 hours worth of messages and emails that you have to reply every day. Fine. You can allocate those 2 hours to emails if that's what you need to do. But you can do it at the end of the day when other critical tasks, important things have been done. But also you can do it with the knowledge of the mindset that I'm not aiming to reach the end. I'm only aiming to spend the prescribed amount of time on this task. So, I have to leave the house at 3:45 to pick up my kids. So I've got until then, and then I have to be done with this. And there may be things that I haven't answered, I haven't finished, emails that I haven't responded to, but it's going to have to wait until the next time block, the next day, when I'm doing those things, because I only have that much time allocated for this task, and then I need to move on. And you can have this mentality with other things as well. So like with your workouts, for example, I block my workouts in and I get myself there. And if I'm feeling like not quite woken up yet, and I'm not feeling like, my best today, I don't put my workout off, I just do it. And let's say it takes me way too long to get warmed up and I'm a bit distracted, and then the hour that I've allocated for working out is up, but I haven't finished. I've still got 3 sets left to go. Well, I don't finish my workout. I just say, okay, well, it's done for today. I did all I could do in that time allocated. Now I'm moving on to the next task. And it feels very counterintuitive, because it feels like, okay, now that I've started, I need to finish the task. But sometimes we can't finish these tasks, and being able to say it's never done, you just decide to stop. Okay, I haven't finished my workout, but I'm just stopping it now and I'm moving on to the next thing. I haven't finished my to-do list. I haven't got to the bottom of my to-do list, but I did everything I could in the time I had available. Now it's time to move on, because there are other important things biding for your time. So for me, at the end of my workday, I have to go pick up my kids, and that's quality time that I have with my children every single day. And if I let work run into that, then now I haven't spent 2 hours with my kids, and now I've got to try and catch up on that time, and then that comes from somewhere else, and then I have to catch up on that, and it's just an endless game of dominoes that you can never win. It just keeps going on forever and ever and ever, and the only way to do it is to abandon the idea of completely completing the task and just being okay with, like, it's never done, you just decide to stop. That is one of the mantras that I took out of this book. And this has so many applications in so many parts of your life. Like for me, when my kids go to bed, that's it. No more phones. Like sometimes I'll watch Netflix or something like that, but I don't touch my phone. I don't look at messages. I don't open WhatsApp, because it never ends. I need time to decompress before I go to sleep. And if I go, okay, I'll just catch up on messages, then I'm 45 minutes into my evening after my kids gone to bed. And then now I'm wired and I'm stressed because of things that I've had to deal with. And now I need time to decompress, but I'm more stressed than I was before, so it's even harder to decompress. And now I go to bed later. It just keeps going. Okay, it's just, you just say, okay, this is my time now. The time for doing other things has ended. Now it's time for me to decompress. Now it's time for me to rest. And I'll pick up everything where I left off yesterday. And I have the same approach to housework. I get housework done in the morning. And then if my kids are playing happily when we're back at home, I get housework done then. But once they're in bed, I don't do any housework. If the kitchen's a mess, if washing is out, I just leave it and I'll get to it in the morning, because it's never done. I'm never going to be on top of all the housework. But tomorrow I have my allocated time in the morning to do housework, and I'll get to it then. It doesn't need to be done now, because now's the time for something else. And then, another concept, the next concept I want to introduce here is from a different book. This is from the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I'll also link below. And that's the important urgent matrix. So in this book, he describes a matrix, like a quadrant of 4 squares, okay, within one bigger square. And along one axis is important, not important. And along the other axis is urgent, not urgent. And all of our tasks that we do on any given day or week fit into one of these quadrants. So one quadrant is important and urgent, another is important but not urgent, another one is urgent but not important, and the other one is not important, not urgent. Okay, so everything fits into these tasks, into these quadrants. And what ends up happening is that we tend to, humans respond really well to deadlines. So we will always prioritize what is urgent over what isn't urgent, right? That's natural. But the problem is that sometimes we have important things and less important things, or unimportant things. And in the things that are most important in life usually aren't urgent. So an example of something that is important and urgent is replying to someone's email, right? Like if you have a potential client, or if you have clients with problems, or your teachers, your son's teacher or whatever, there is actually a time pressure on here. It's not as tight a deadline as most people think, but there is actually a time pressure here to answer. Or if you have a project at work or in your studies that you have to hand in, this is urgent and important. But the problem is that some of the most important things in life are important but not urgent. So exercise is one of these things. It's very, very important to exercise every week, but it's never urgent, because I can always put it off till tomorrow. I can always put it off until next week. And so even though it's one of the most important things you can do, you can end up going decades with never exercising because it's not urgent. It doesn't have to be done now. And this is where a lot of people find it easier to show up to a class that they've paid for, or a personal training session that they've paid for, rather than motivate themselves to do it themselves, because that gives an added element of urgency, kind of fake element of urgency that wouldn't otherwise be there. And that forces them to do it, and that tells you that somebody is living in the urgent, not important part of the matrix. They're constantly putting out fires. They're constantly just responding to what has to be done now because someone else is waiting for it, rather than working from a deeper sense of what is most important to me in my life. And another example of something that is extremely important but not urgent is time with people that we love. Okay, so our kids is a great example, right? Having quality time with them. It doesn't have to happen today. Mummy's too busy. I've got work. I've got to finish this. I've got this deadline. I've got other things to do. It can happen tomorrow, and it can happen at the weekend. But then our weekends are busy. It's like, okay, it can happen next week. And then it never, ever, ever happens. And likewise with our partners, with our friends and family, one of the big things that he says in the book is that, you just have to give these relationship building and trust building. It just takes time, and you just have to allow it to take your time and be able to there's this element of surrender that is applicable to the previous point as well. Like resisting the temptation to clear the decks and just be fully present on the task that's in front of you, even though there are other things that haven't been completed or that feel unresolved, is being able to still concentrate on the person that you love that's in front of you, the relationship that's in front of you, or the exercise that you need to do, even though you've got a million things to do today. A lot of us live in this place of saying, well, when I get on top of my work, then I will do exercise. But actually, you have to do it. You have to actually flip this the other way around. You have to say, even though I haven't done all my work yet, and even though there are lots of things to do today, and even though there are lots of things that are unresolved, I have to carve out this time for my workouts. Otherwise, it will not happen. And you have to live with that anxiety and that sort of knowledge that there are things that need to be done, but you're not currently doing because you're doing something else that's really important. And that's the same for anything that's important. If you've got a book that you want to write, if you've got, any big important project, for me, it's like creating podcasts, creating content, this kind of thing. I have to do it even though I've got a long to-do list to get on with afterwards. But if I start with my long to-do list of checking off tasks, answering messages, I end up getting to the end of my day, all I've done is answer messages, and I haven't got a podcast filmed, or I haven't made any content for my members site, right? But if I do the important tasks first, if I spend an hour or two making podcasts, writing emails, that's then done. And then I can move on to the messages that I need to catch up on, the tasks I need to catch up on, that are always going to be there, right? And I'm never going to get to the bottom of the to-do list. So this is where the advice is it's counterintuitive, but it's also really uncomfortable because it's not what most people want to do. Most people want to just kind of go la 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 and just keep going and keep really, really, really busy, rather than stopping to think about actually what is most important for me to do first. What's the next most important thing, and what big thing needs to be done today, rather than just busying myself in little tasks. Okay, so the next big takeaway, I think this is number 4 now. He describes it as going from FOMO, fear of missing out, to JOMO, joy of missing out. And again, this is another counterintuitive thing, but so many of us are living in such conformity to what everyone else's expectations are and what the society's expectations are around us, that we're not actually stopping to think about what's really important to us. And, I work with people in Israel, in Australia, in America, in the UK, and everyone describes the same thing of like this kind of busyness, life being so busy, and they think that it's just unique to where they are, and feeling like there are so many things that they have to do because it's a requirement of the society that they live in. But again, I think this is a really uncomfortable truth that a lot of people kind of don't want to hear, is that a lot of the things that you are going along with because everyone else is, and because you're scared of being different or scared of saying no to people, or you have FOMO, is actually optional, and you don't actually have to do it. And actually, to do anything important in your life and to have time for the things that you want, you actually have to start to learn to say no to all of the things that you actually don't have to do and you don't actually want to do, and like just getting rid of them. And there are so many ways of reducing like things to do, things off of our to-do list. I'll give you a few examples from my life, okay? There are lots and lots of events that are just they're just not applicable to us. So one really big thing that we've been talking about recently in our house is birthday parties. Now, I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. I also have a 1.5-year-old, but it's not quite relevant for her yet. But for my 4-year-old and my 7-year-old now, and we're at the stage where everyone all of the teachers, all of the parents think that it is necessary to have a birthday party for all 30 children in their class. Now, my youngest, my middle son, who's 4, he's in a class of 35, and my oldest is in a class of 30. But there are 10 kids that he went to nursery with up until last year who are also invited to all the birthday parties, and he's invited to all of their birthday parties. So it actually gets bumped up to 40 kids a year. So all in all, that is 75 kids a year, their birthday parties. That we have to go to, everyone feels like they have to go to. But having been to some of these birthday parties, my children do not enjoy them. They're the same format every single time. They have way too much stimulation. My kids always ask to go home, or if you can go outside and there's trees to play in. My kids are always one of the weirdos out there. They complain about the loud music. They complain about all the noise, especially if it's in a closed space, and they don't actually like it. And they don't know half the kids there, because let's face it, they're not friends with all 30 kids in their class. It's way too many people. And so what we decided in our house is that, one, we are not having big birthday parties for my children with all of their classmates, because my kids do not enjoy this. So why would I do a birthday party that my children don't enjoy? I do a small birthday party for a few of their friends and a few of our friends that we really want to have there, who have kids the same age. And they're the best kids' birthday parties. The adults enjoy it, the kids enjoy it. That it's basically just free play in a playground or something, or on the beach or something like that. And they love it. And we don't go to the vast majority of the other birthday parties. Now, you might think, well, that's not right, you shouldn't do that. But when you add them all together, the 70 different birthday parties, that's more than one a week, okay, for us throughout the entire year, okay? And once my youngest gets to like 3 and she's got that as well, we're going to have over 100 birthday parties a year to go to. That means 2 a week. And every single one of those costs us 50 shekels for the kids' present. Okay, over the course of a year for 3 children, that will cost us 5,000 shekels. Okay, 5,000 shekels just on birthday presents for other kids, and most of them we don't even know. That's like $1,500, right? So we've just decided we're opting out of this. Yes, my son's going to go to his best friend's birthday party. His few friends that he actually wants to go to their birthday party is going to go to, right? But I'm not going to all of them. We are not going to drag our whole family. And half of the time you can't bring younger brothers and sisters, and it's just impossible. So we just say no in our household, and you can say no too. You don't have to say no to this one particular thing if it's not for you, or if you do want to be going to these birthday parties. But almost all the parents that I know hate this. They hate throwing these birthday parties. They hate going to them. And I've said, why don't you just not do it? And they're like, oh no, you have to. You don't actually have to. Nobody cares. Nobody knows if you're there or not. And it just doesn't matter to anyone. And even if someone does, if somebody's sitting there with their notepad going, oh, Charlie's mum didn't come to this birthday party, like I'm gonna, like, what does it matter? It's an annoying person who is like got their clipboard and taking notes about what everyone else is doing and not doing. It's not somebody that I want to impress anyway. So you can just say no. Other things are just time and stuff that you don't need, right? Like, so many people spend so much on stuff they don't need, on objects, on possessions that they don't need, and then you have to work more to pay for it. So just having less stuff, or I'm in a couple of WhatsApp groups where mums, get rid of their old junk and exchange it. And if there's stuff that's relevant for us, like children's shoes or stuff like that, I get it so I don't have to buy it. Furniture, things like that, often get secondhand. You just don't need as much as you think you do. And there's a lot of objects that you can just not purchase in the first place. Holidays, I get it. Family holidays, amazing time together. But I work with people who go on holiday every single month. It is just not feasible. I don't understand how people are paying for this. You have to budget your money as well as your time, and everyone's coming back drained. The holiday feels like a chore. It's the fourth holiday they've been on this year. I had to go because, my family wanted to go. Well, no, we can't go at this time. I'm sorry. I just had to turn down a trip because I said, I'm sorry, we don't have the budget for it this year. We've already been away to Greece and we can't afford to go on this. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to say, I don't have the time or money. I can't take the time off work. I can't deal with it. Other events that I just don't go to are like things in the evening because I'm just brain dead in the evening. So I just go to bed. And obviously, like a couple of weeks ago, we had a family wedding that was in the evening. I couldn't not go to that. Fine, it happens. And I went and I enjoyed it. I suffered the next day, but I enjoyed it. But when there's all these little things that go on in the evenings, these courses that I could be doing, these, parents meetings or whatever, or Zoom meetings to discuss a certain topic, the answer is no, because I can't do that on a weekly basis. At this stage in my life, when I have little kids, when I'm getting up at 5, 6 in the morning, I can't, and I'm not willing to do those things. And you can say no as well. Renovations in your home. The number of people, I think we have this culture now of just redoing your kitchen when your kitchen is perfectly fine. It costs a load of money and you have to work for that money, and you could just not spend it in the first place. But everyone feels like it's a requirement. I haven't redone my kitchen for 5 years, right? That's another thing I just opt out of. I just keep things clean and tidy and minimalist, and I don't change everything in my home because of the fashions. I just have something that feels clean and tidy, and that's it, and it's not going to get redone every so often. Nails. So many women I know, I don't have time to work out, I don't have time to track my calories, and they get their nails done every 2 weeks and it takes like 2 hours. The nails are one of the biggest cons ever. Getting these acrylic nails, it takes forever. It destroys your nail. It's expensive. And so many women who just say, I don't have enough time for anything. I'm so busy. I'm so overwhelmed all the time. And they always have pristine nails. Nobody cares about nails apart from other women. It's a status symbol. It's a sign of, it's what's called conspicuous consumption. You're spending money on something to signal your wealth and the amount of time you have available to other people, and mainly to other women, because men don't care about nails. Your husband doesn't think you're more beautiful because you got your nails done, right? Your boss doesn't think you're better at your job because you've got nice nails. It's not an essential thing. It's just something that women do to signal to other women their status. But the irony is that so many people are spending money and time that they don't have to get their nails done. And it's kind of doing the opposite now of what it should be. It should be signaling leisure and spare time, but now it just signals that you are conforming to social norms, even when they are completely detrimental to you and your life. So these are just a few examples of, that was a long list, but of things that you can just opt out of and not do on a day-to-day basis, and not spend time that you don't have to spend, money that you don't have to spend, which means work that you don't have to, money that you don't have to spend, if you really figure out what matters in life. But at the crux of this, the really important thing here is understanding your values and beliefs versus the values and beliefs of the people around you and the society around you. A lot of people find it really hard to tease these things out, but once you really start to differentiate between what actually matters to you and what you're doing in order to conform with the societal norms around you and just to fit in, and just because you have FOMO, this is when you'll find that 80% of the things on your to-do list just don't need to get done. And I did a podcast recently on the 5 stages of adult development, which I think really covers this really, really well. Stage 3 is kind of that conformity trap where you're doing things because it fits in with others, because you're people pleasing, because you want to, keep up with the Joneses and that kind of thing. Whereas stage 4 is when you really start to identify your core values and beliefs and then live in accordance with those, and doing things or not doing things because they are in line with your core values and beliefs and not those of other people. And what I often find here is that because people can't say no to things that matter to other people, they end up saying no to the things that they really want. So I can't tell you how many of my clients have said, like, what I really want is quiet weekends at home and quality time with my kids where we don't have to rush anywhere. But because they're not able to say no to the holiday or to the event or to the 10 events that is happening over that weekend, they end up rushing around all weekend, feeling completely scattered, feeling completely exhausted. And what they're saying no to is they're saying no to the quiet time that they said they really wanted at home with their kids. And that, I think, is a really important part of this, is that often we're paying the price in things that are really truly important to us, because we're not willing to say no to the things that aren't that important to us. And when you start to realize the cost of going along with everything and trying to do everything, you then can start to really focus on, okay, how can I switch this round? Okay, so moving on. Insight number 5, you want to have a buffer, okay? So the big, like the sentence or the mantra that I got out of, I think it was out of Time Management for Mortals, was, I'm not saying no because I'm too busy. I'm saying no because I don't want to be too busy. So the idea is that you fill up your time, but that you make sure there's always a bit of a buffer in there in case something goes wrong. Kind of like having a savings account for a rainy day, right? If you just blow through all your current account and then your car breaks down and you don't have anything put to one side, you're kind of screwed, okay? You don't have the money to pay for that. So in the same way, you want to have a savings account for time. You want to have a bit of a buffer built into your day, into your week, for when things go wrong. Because if you are a mum of little kids, things are going to go wrong. There is going to be, you're going to have a sick kid at some point, and then your work day is ruined, or the car is going to break down and you're going to need to get it fixed, or there is going to be some thing at school that you forgot about, that you need to make a cake or get stuff ready for, and you don't have any time to squeeze that into your day. So you want to make sure you just have a buffer built in. The way that I do this in my week is I identify my core tasks, okay? And my core tasks are the ones that I have to do every week. So I have to do check-ins every week, bar maybe 3 or 4 weeks a year when I have a holiday. But I have to get everyone's check-ins done every week. I have to answer all my client messages, and I have to complete all tasks for my clients. So what I typically do is over Sunday, Monday, I'm doing check-ins, and as tasks pop up. Say I have to write someone a new training program, or I have to update, I have to look at someone's videos for review, or I have to send someone a video, or I have to, I don't know, like sort out some kind of payment or something. What I do is I write a to-do list and of tasks, of client tasks that have to be done. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, I get those tasks done. Normally, if I'm focused, Tuesday, I can get them all done. They have to get done every week. They are my central tasks. If I do all of that, I'm good. Okay. And that takes me about 20 hours a week, 15 to 20 hours a week. And I make sure that it doesn't surpass that, because then I spend the rest of my week doing social media posts, doing podcasts like this one, getting new clients on board. These are all optionals. These are all things that I don't have to do. My business is still running. I'm still making money, but these are things that I do technically need to do in order to have, more clients later on down the line and have a pipeline and stuff like that. But if one week I don't get it done, it doesn't matter. So if I have a sick kid, or this week I've had this absolute nightmare with the passport office and I have to go back to the passport office to fix something that should have been done the other day, it's okay, because I have the time to do it. It's annoying and I wish I had time to do other things this week with work, but I'm still okay, because I've got my central tasks, my core tasks done that are absolutely non-negotiable. And I just don't write an email this week, or I don't film a podcast or a second podcast or whatever it is. Like, my business is still okay. But what I find with this is it's less about learning how to say no to other people, and it's more about learning how to say no to yourself. Like, all these other things that you want to do, that you want to try and cram in. Oh, I'll do this course. Oh, I'll go on this this trip, or I'll go and do this, I'll go and do that. And then now you've got no buffer in, and you get a sick kid, and now you're going to have to work until midnight to be able to finish your work. You've got to make sure, especially if you're a mum of small kids, you've got to make sure you've got that buffer built in. Okay, I'm going to move on with these quicker because we're already at the 50-minute mark. Rest. Rest is a non-negotiable, and it is one of those important, not urgent tasks. But in the modern world, everyone thinks that rest is optional, that I can just not rest today. I can just not rest this week. I can just not rest this year, and I'm going to be totally fine. But what ends up happening is you sacrifice rest every single day. You never have any decompression time. You never have any downtime. You become completely overstimulated, completely overwhelmed. And then it's a cycle, right? You can function like that for a period of time, let's say a week. High stress, high cortisol, high stress levels all the time. Until I'm doing things, until the moment I go to bed, I collapse into bed, I wake up in the morning, I start doing things straight away, no rest whatsoever built into my week. You can do it for a while, but then you start getting less productive, you start getting tired, you start getting unfocused, and then you don't get tasks done. So now you're behind on things, and now you need rest more, but you can't have rest because I'm not allowed rest because I haven't got everything done. And then you keep going and keep going and keep going. You're getting less and less productive until you crash. You get sick, you burn out, you just can't do anything. You need a mental health day. You have a mental breakdown. Like, something happens. So often I just see clients eventually they just physically get sick. They're so disconnected from their body and what they feel, what they need, and listen, like overriding their body signals of exhaustion, of fatigue all the time, that then they eventually just crash. Their bodies just get sick and just completely, it's like the body forcing you to just like, you've got to rest. The thing about rest, and there's this huge paradox with rest, is that you need downtime every day. You're not a robot, right? You can't just keep going and going and going. And even if you were a robot, right? I have a robot like vacuum cleaner thing, but it still needs to go back to its charging deck to like charge after it's finished, right? So even robots need to rest. Like, you need to rest you need to decompress. And our lives are so stressful, and then we have no decompression. What I do, and what I think works for most people, and what I think most people need to start doing, is one, having a rest every week. I've talked quite a bit about observing the Sabbath, and Obviously, for Jews, this is like quite accessible, but even if you're not Jewish, you can still take 24-hour digital Sabbath, even no connection to religion whatsoever. Just don't work for an entire day. Don't look at your phone for an entire day, right? Just have a complete break from everything 1 day a week. And that allows you to reset, that allows you to rest, and it allows you to retreat from the world. And you also need that every evening, right? After you finish work, after the kids have gone to bed, for me, that's the time when I turn off my phone, or I don't turn off my phone. I just don't look at my phone. I don't look at WhatsApp. I don't look at anything, because I want to retreat into my house. I don't want the outside world like creeping in, all these people and all these demands that are at me all day, every day. I want to retreat from that world. I want like the privacy of my own home. And the thing is that like hundreds of years ago, we didn't have this concept of privacy, right? People would have been always in our space, always in our business, right? We might not have had, private homes. We might have been, living like if go back thousands of years, we would have been living in like communes with other people. But we created more and more and more privacy. But what social media has done, and WhatsApp and all of this technology and smartphones, is it's then burst through our privacy. And no longer are we able to just close the doors on our house and just retreat into our private lives. Now we have to, we just have to still be responsive to everyone, like 24/7. And people are still replying to messages at 9 o'clock at night. You don't need to do that. Just leave it. It's done for today. You go and you need to rest now. Again, it's never done. It's not that rest also is one of those things that it's not that you get it only when you deserve it. It's not that you earn it because you've finished everything on your to-do list. You need it every day, whether or not you finished everything on your to-do list. So there has to be a cutoff time. And for me, that's 8 p.m. I don't look at my phone anymore, or once my kids go to bed is the best sort of cutoff time. I don't look at my phone anymore. And that's just time for me to have downtime. Even if I haven't finished anything from my to-do list today, even if I took a sick day, even if nothing was done. And this might sound like, oh my God, I don't have the time to do this. But the thing is that the paradox is that when you take time to rest and recharge your batteries, you get more done. And then if you also learn how to prioritize the most important stuff and get that done, and not just put out fires and clear the decks all the time, you get even more done. And all of this is just very, very paradoxical. It feels like, oh no, I can't possibly do that. But if you surrender to it, you actually end up being more effective. And I just often think about, we talk about children and teenagers just having no retreat from the world, because they used to be able to come home if they were getting bullied at school. They used to be able to come home and then just be with their family and go to bed and not have to deal with it until the next day at school. But now they have smartphones. They go home and they can go to bed, and open up their social media, and they're still getting bullied, or WhatsApp, they're still getting bullied from these kids. So they never get that private space to retreat away from it. And we're the same. And we never allow ourselves that space and time to just retreat from the demands of the world and say, I just need to rest now, and then I'll pick it up again tomorrow. And number 6, is this number 6 or number 7? This is number 7. Just one final word on this before we move to the solutions is resisting hustle culture. There is a culture around us that tells us, I see these messages all the time, like you just have to want it more. You just have to get up at 5 a.m. You just have to, if you want to build the business of your dreams, you're going to have to be working when everyone else is sleeping. There are lots and lots and lots of these messages around us all the time. And I think it's important to understand, to be able to take a step back from it and ask, is this for me? Is this message for me? Because that message is for some people, but it's not for everyone. And I often think there's 2 criteria. One, do you understand your own limits and your own threshold for stress? Because I know, for example, my husband, he has a very high threshold for stress. He's very, very productive. He only needs about 5 hours sleep a night. He can, I collapse into bed and he stays up for a few more hours doing stuff. And for so many years, I tried to keep up with him, and I kept burning out and didn't understand. Like, I just need more willpower. I just need to work harder. I just need to be more like him. And ironically, that wasn't the solution. The solution was to realize that my limits are different from his. And I actually can't do what he can do. And so I need more rest. I can't get as much done in a 24-hour period. And it sucks. I wish I was productive as he is, but I'm not. So I just need to let go of that and accept what my limits are. So when you're seeing hustle culture messaging, remember, there are some people that can live this way. There are some people that can live with very high levels of stress all the time and do lots and lots and lots of things. I think Donald Trump is one of those people. Elon Musk is one of those people. There are people who can do those, who can be, on all the time. But it's probably not you, because most people are not like that. They are exceptions. They're not the rule. So it doesn't necessarily mean that hustle culture is wrong. If you want to build an empire and be like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, then yeah, you need to hustle, right? But if you just want a quiet life, you want, a decent income, you want like connection with your friends and family, you want peace and quiet, like you don't have to hustle, right? Like those messages aren't for you. And some people, their career is everything. I remember listening to a podcast from, and this might get me in trouble, from Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens before she went crazy. And they were talking about how, we can just hustle, we can just work harder. The only thing we can do is we can work harder than other people. We don't need to sleep. We just keep going. We were always sleep deprived, blah, blah, blah. And look, they're two of the biggest names. Everyone knows who they are. Charlie Kirk, both of them, extremely well connected in politics, have a huge voice, a huge platform, built huge organizations that, have changed politics to a large degree. And we need people like that. And there are people like that in the world. But is that you? If it is you, if you are like Marie Curie and your entire life is dedicated towards curing cancer, fantastic, right? Like hustle, right? Lose sleep, lose like connections with the people around you. Like that is fine, right? Like it's fine to live that way. I'm not saying that you shouldn't live that way or that no one should live that way. Or that nobody should have that drive that like this and a passion that I'm building an empire and this is the most important thing in the world. There are obviously people like that, and that's fine, but you have to be really honest with yourself. Is that really you? Is that really going to be you? Because for most of us, it's not. And trying to do it and failing, because most of us are going to fail, are just going to end up not like a small, quiet life is all that most of us can hope to have. And we sacrifice that, we give that up because we're trying to be like hustle and, do more than anyone else and build an empire, but like you're not building an empire. So what are you actually trying to do, right? You kind of end up either failing to do this big, huge thing and changing the world and whatever, or you can just succeed in having this quiet, steady life that you actually really, really enjoy being in. And I just sometimes think that we lose sight of the very, very, very sensible, reasonable reality that is right at our fingertips and we can have if we just focus on the right things for this like kind of fantasy dream that is just not achievable for most of us. Okay, so let's move on to the solutions, okay? And I've kind of gone through the solutions through most of the podcast, so this should be really, really quick. I have 4 solutions here. One is accept reality, right? Is to just accept the limits of time, that there are only 168 hours a week and you cannot fit 300 hours worth of activities into that week. But also learning your limits. It doesn't matter if someone else is able to do more. You will get true peace when you learn what your actual limits are instead of thinking that you should do more, that you could do more, or comparing yourself to someone else who can do more. Really getting to honestly know yourself and say, it might be great that other people, answer loads of WhatsApp messages at 9 o'clock at night, but I can't do it. I need to rest. I need to go to sleep. That's fine. That you're going to get so much more done if you really learn to accept your limits. And I think a big mindset shift for mums is that we want to teach our children how to have, good relationships and how to have boundaries and how to be well-boundaried people. That's, the basis of being a healthy person and having healthy relationships. But we don't know how to do it ourselves. We don't know how to recognize our own limits. We tell our children, are you sure you've had enough food to eat? Are you sure your tummy's full? Like, we try to teach them, or like, maybe you've had a bit too much to eat. Is your tummy hurting? We try to teach them how to recognize the boundaries of their own self. Look, you're tired now. It's been a long day. You're getting really grumpy. You're having a meltdown. I think you're just tired and you need to go to bed. And they're like, no, I want to stay up. I don't want to go to bed. But we teach them that, no, what you're experiencing is tired and overwhelmed, and you just need to go to bed and relax and reset. But we don't know how to set those limits on ourselves. We don't know how to respect our own limits. So much of this is just about, again, I said earlier in the podcast, that it's less about saying no to other people and it's more about learning how to say no to yourself, learning how to, call yourself out on your bullshit. No, I don't actually have the energy to go and fold laundry now, or to go and do more housework, or to get work done. I'm just going to go to bed. We don't know how to set those boundaries on ourselves. So how are we going to teach our children to have those healthy boundaries with work, with other people, with the outside world? And I think the other thing that people really do that I haven't mentioned before is that they numb themselves, right? Because we don't want to face the fact that we actually have a finite amount of time and we can't actually get everything done. What we then end up doing, ironically, is numbing ourselves, either spending, an hour doom scrolling, pretending that there aren't other tasks to do, or like just numbing ourselves with food or with alcohol or whatever it is. And we lose a whole bunch of time to that, but it's okay. In our mind, somehow it's okay. We've got time for that because it's just an escape. It's an escape from this really facing reality and saying, actually, I've only got so much time. I'm just going to go to bed now instead of staying up and doom scrolling for an hour. Okay, the second solution, and this is by no means an easy one, but it's about identifying what your values are, what your beliefs are, and what is most important to you in life. And I don't want to make this podcast too long, so I don't want to recommend too many specific activities for doing this, but I have made a separate podcast on figuring out what the most important things are. But figuring out what the most important things are in your life is incredibly important, and then being committed to them every single day and reminding yourself of them. I did an exercise a little while ago where I identified that there are really only 3 really important things for me. 1, having a happy, healthy, connected family. 2, having physical and mental health, like my physical and mental health being good. And 3, having financial stability and having, this job that I really enjoy, get a lot of pleasure out of, and also that supports my family and myself financially. Those are the only 3 things that matter. Everything else is not important. Those are 3 very big things, and it takes all the time and all the energy I have to get those things done. But it means that I have a really big reason why when I go and do my workouts. Yes, there are a bajillion other things that I could be doing, but I dedicate that hour to my workout because it's an important task. Even if it's not urgent, I have to get it done every week. I have to eat the right things. I have to sleep the right amount. I have to spend this hour filming this podcast and then another hour editing it and getting it in the right places. There's no, even though there's a million other things for me to do, right? Because it's something that is important. And once you identify what your values and beliefs are that drive you, then you can make decisions. You work backwards from there about what things to say yes to and what things to say no to. So if what really matters to you is having quiet weekends at home with the kids, now you can start to say yes to that. And then when other things come up that distract you from that, birthday parties that you don't want to go to, events that you don't want to go to, trips that you don't want to do, money that you don't have to spend, just say no to them because you don't want to say no to the thing that's truly important. Okay, number 3 is to declutter your life. Okay, same way that you would declutter your home, get rid of stuff that you don't need. You have to learn what you don't need in your life, what things you don't need, what events you don't need, what things you're going to say no to. And everyone is so busy trying to fit all of the things in and trying to figure out how they can juggle all the things. You cannot juggle all the things. You have to get rid of like 80% of the crap that you don't need to do and you don't need to have. It's as simple as that, but it's what nobody wants to do. So I went through a massive minimalist stage, decluttering stage, Marie Kondo stage, where I got rid of so much crap. And I've kept that, in my weekly practice, that like there's things in the house that I don't need this. I give it away. I either figure out if I can give it away, throw it away, or recycle it. And it just has to leave the house because I don't need it anymore. So I've always got a box of things, like outgoing things from my house that I'm trying to get rid of. You need to have the same thing about your life. Recently, I gave the example of birthday parties. Recently, I went along with the crowd. I threw a big birthday party for my son. And do you know what I learned from that experience? No, I need to get rid of birthday parties from my life, as many as possible. I don't need this in my life. It doesn't contribute anything. It doesn't align with my values. It doesn't align with my beliefs. It doesn't align with my identity. It doesn't align with who I want to be. It doesn't align with who my children are or who I want them to be. It doesn't align with anything. So it just has to go. And yes, there's that niggly voice of like, oh, what will people think? And will some people judge me and blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't matter. You have to be ruthless with that stuff because that stuff will steal your joy and steal your time and steal all the really important things from your life. You will not have the quiet weekends at home with your kids if you can't say no to that stuff just because you're worried about what other people will think. Okay, number 4. So this is the final solution. And this is a more practical one. Okay, time blocking. This doesn't have to be a really rigid thing, but just roughly having an idea of like, from this time to this time is dedicated to certain tasks. So just to give you a really rough example, my day starts between 5 and 6. I'm up at that point. I have some quiet time for some personal reflection while I drink a coffee, a massive strong coffee, and wake myself up. And then like once that sort of like the first 15 minutes of quiet time is up, I then start getting on with housework, getting small bits done. Twice a week I go off to a CrossFit class at 7 a.m. So it's either housework or CrossFit class. Then my kids wake up around somewhere between 6 and 7. And so then it's just getting them ready to go to school, nursery and stuff, and getting housework done around that. My husband takes them to school, nursery. So my son gets a bus right outside our house. So he takes the younger two to nursery while I do housework. Then I start working between 9 and 10. Then I basically work until, 3:30. I have time to eat. I eat at 12 and again at 3:30. I usually have breakfast as well. Then it's time for my kids. Oh, and when it comes to work, the first part of my day, I try to do important but not urgent tasks, filming podcasts, things that I need to be doing when I'm fresh. And then I move on to the urgent but not important tasks, or not as important tasks, right? Like answering messages and things like that don't require quite as much brain power as the critical tasks. Then I pick up my kids and I don't work. I don't do anything else. I'm just with my kids. I might meet up with a friend who has kids as well, so we can chat, but it's basically getting everyone ready. Sometimes my kids play really nicely and I don't really have to do that much, and I can get on with housework, I can cook, I can do other things. Sometimes it's an absolute mental, everyone's crying, everyone has a meltdown, and I obviously can't do anything when it's like that, but I'm with them for whatever they need. And then they are in bed by 8 o'clock, not always asleep, but that's kind of the cutoff time. And then for me it's downtime, and then I go to bed around 9. And that's it. And then I get up and do it all over again. It's just this clear blocking of time that this is for this specific task or this set of tasks. And just like I said earlier in the podcast, when that allocated amount of time is up, you say, it doesn't matter whether I finished or not. It doesn't matter when it's 7:30, it's time for my kids to go to bed. I don't say, okay, well, we didn't get to do like enough drawing together, or we didn't get to do all the things because you had meltdowns or whatever, we didn't actually get to do your homework. We didn't do that. We don't stay up to do that stuff. We say, nope, it's bedtime now. It doesn't matter what we got done or didn't get done. It's now time for the next part of the day. When I leave work at 3:30, it doesn't matter if I finished my whole to-do list. It's time to move on to the next task, which is being with my kids. So being able to handle and surrender to that idea that even if the to-do list isn't done, it's still time to move on to the next task. And that's why I find time blocking to be very, very, very useful, because it gives you a very clear structure to each day. And it also gives you a mental framework to handle that, to handle that stress of being like, okay, there are still undone tasks. That's okay. There are always going to be undone tasks. It's just time to move on to the next thing now. The work is never done. You just decide to stop. Okay, so that was a really long podcast. And if you're still here, thank you so much for listening. I hope that wasn't rambly, but this is a big topic that has been coming up so much in the coaching recently. I really wanted to get my thoughts down. I'll maybe do a few more podcast episodes on the topic, keeping it maybe a little bit more concise, or, zooming into one particular part of this, or talking around the topic. I'm still sort of trying to create the whole kind of the concept map of this topic right now. So if it's a little bit of a mess or a little bit all over the place, I apologize for that. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your big takeaways from this podcast episode. I'd love to hear if you've got any requests for future episodes, or if you have any questions about any of this content or any of the concepts that I discussed in the podcast. And, if this speaks to you and you need help with that kind of aspect of it, as a big part of what we do on the coaching program. It's not just the fat loss and the training. It's also about, the mental maps that we need to be able to prioritize the diet and the training, because it's so often stuff like this time management stuff that is getting in the way. Okay, thanks for listening. Until next time.